Have you ever wondered why some people can just throw a cut branch into a glass of water and after a few days, thick, healthy roots sprout, while for you, the stem just turns into a mushy brown disaster? What if I told you it's not because you lack a green thumb? Today, I'll show you how to grow a strong new plant from absolutely any cutting in record time. There is a small, often overlooked secret, a single completely natural ingredient that you just need to add to the water, and your cuttings will literally explode with growth. Forget everything you've learned so far about propagating plants in a glass of water. Be sure to stick around until the end, because I will also reveal a widespread myth that is secretly sabotaging your plants. Let's dive right in and change your plant world forever. For generations, people have passed down knowledge about plant propagation. In the past, it was vital for survival to successfully clone crops to secure the next year's harvest. Today, we mostly do it out of love for our houseplants or to beautify our gardens. The method of water rooting is as old as gardening itself. You cut off a shoot, put it in water, and wait. However, in nature, plants don't actually grow in pure glasses of water. The transition from an intact plant to a detached piece is a massive shock to the tissue. The plant suddenly loses its nutrient source, and its immune system is weakened. It is exactly at this open cut that bacteria and fungi lurk, just waiting to decompose the plant. Modern industry has invented chemical rooting hormones for this, but nature has long provided us with its own, much better tools that we have simply forgotten over the decades. Today, we are bringing exactly these old forgotten methods back to light. Let's start right away with the absolute biggest frustration factor that we probably all know too well. You cut off a beautiful branch of your absolute favorite plant. Full of hope and love, you place it in a clean glass of water on the windowsill. And what happens then? After just 3 or 4 days, the lower part of the stem suddenly turns brown, incredibly soft and really slimy. Instead of magnificent, bright white roots, you have basically just produced a foul-smelling, cloudy broth. But what exactly went wrong beneath the water's surface? Most people mistakenly believe that clear tap water alone is completely sufficient to magically create new life. However, this is a very widespread and dangerous misconception. Normal tap water often lacks the substances the plant urgently needs right now, but instead contains bacteria that penetrate the injured, fresh tissue of the plant. The open wound of the cutting is like a free feast for microscopic organisms. If the small plant no longer has its own energy to defend itself against this attack, rot always wins in the end. Just imagine you have a fresh wound on your finger and hold it in lukewarm water for days. It would immediately become infected. To avoid this fatal mistake from now on, we must transform the water into an actively protective and nourishing environment. We have to help the cutting, and exactly at this crucial point, our first magical ingredient comes into play, completely changing the game. It is something that almost every one of you has sitting in your own kitchen right now. I am talking about ordinary raw honey. Yes, you heard that absolutely right. Half a teaspoon of honey can make the difference between a rotting plant and a true rooting miracle. Many people are initially skeptical when they hear this. They immediately think that sugar in the water should actually attract bacteria. But here we must immediately dispel a huge myth. Raw honey is not just sweet syrup, it is an incredible natural miracle cure that has been enriched with special enzymes by bees. If you briefly dip the stem of your fresh cutting into a little honey before placing it in water, or dissolve a tiny amount of it in the glass of water, something absolutely amazing happens. The honey wraps around the open, injured cut of the plant like an invisible protective bandage. This method is so old and proven that our grandparents were already using it in the garden long before there were expensive products from the garden center. It is the purest form of a natural plant pharmacy. But let's take a closer look at what science says behind this fascinating home remedy. Why exactly does honey work so incredibly well? The main reason lies in the extremely strong antibacterial and antifungal properties that raw honey naturally possesses. When the plant is in the water, fungal spores and putrefactive bacteria immediately try to penetrate the fine conductive pathways of the stem. The honey acts here like an impenetrable firewall. It contains tiny amounts of hydrogen peroxide, which has a naturally disinfecting effect without burning or damaging the sensitive plant tissue. At the same time, It provides the plant, which has been separated from its mother plant by the cut and is under massive stress, with a quick dose of easily usable energy. This is exactly like eating a glucose tablet after an extremely exhausting marathon. The plant immediately uses this gained energy to stop fighting diseases and instead puts it entirely into the production of new cells and thus into the highly anticipated root growth. It is a perfect biological cycle that we can trigger with just a drop of honey. To make the whole thing a bit clearer, I would like to give you a brilliant practical example. Imagine you want to propagate a beautiful rubber tree, meaning a ficus. These plants are notorious for secreting a white, sticky, milky sap when cut, and for starting to rot extremely quickly in a glass of water. They are real little divas when it comes to propagation. But if you now take the freshly cut ficus branch, briefly dab off the white sap with a clean cloth, and then carefully dip the end into pure organic honey, you will experience a real miracle. Then place it in a glass of room temperature water. You will see that the dreaded rot is completely absent. Instead, small white dots will form at the cut after just 10 to 14 days. These are the so-called callus cells from which the strong roots will sprout in the next step. Without the protective honey, this rubber tree cutting would simply rot sadly in 9 out of 10 cases. This simple example clearly shows how powerful natural remedies can be if we only know how to use them correctly. But honey is not our only secret for absolute success. There is a second, almost even more powerful ingredient that will literally make your cuttings explode. If you happen to have an aloe vera plant sitting on your windowsill, then you are literally sitting on a gold mine for plant propagation. Aloe vera is not only a fantastic remedy for sunburn on our human skin, but the pure gel from its thick leaves contains natural salicylic acid. This acid is extremely important in botany. It acts as a natural rooting hormone and sends strong chemical signals directly to the cells of the cut stem. The message is very simple and direct. Build new roots immediately. If we use this gel wisely, we can massively accelerate the plant's natural rhythm. It's almost as if we were shifting our plant's engine into overdrive. The amino acids and vitamins it contains also act like a rich cocktail that optimally nourishes the cutting during the difficult transition phase. Once you have tried this, you will understand why so many experienced gardeners swear by this unassuming desert plant. So how do you apply this method correctly in practice? It's super easy. Simply cut off a small piece, about 2 inches, 5 centimeters long, from a lower leaf of your aloe vera plant. The mother plant can handle this without any problems, and the wound closes very quickly on its own. Then use a small spoon to scrape the transparent, slimy gel out of the inside of the leaf. Be absolutely sure to avoid the yellowish liquid directly under the green skin, as this can be slightly irritating. Puree this pure, clear gel with a little lukewarm water until a slightly cloudy liquid is formed. Now place your cuttings exactly into this aloe water. You will hardly believe your eyes how quickly small root tips suddenly appear, even on very stubborn plants. It is an absolutely fascinating process. If you are in a particular hurry, you can also simply stick the cut end of the cutting directly into the thick, fleshy aloe leaf and then plant the whole thing together in the soil. The gel protects the wound and continuously supplies hormones until the roots are strong enough. That is pure botanical magic. Here we absolutely must clear up another very big myth that the gardening industry likes to keep alive. Very often, colorful advertisements try to convince us that we absolutely have to buy expensive, chemically produced rooting powders in plastic tubs to successfully grow plants. That is simply wrong. These artificial preparations often contain synthetic indyl butyric acid. Yes, they generally work, but they also carry risks. If you use just a little bit too much of this powder, you literally burn the sensitive tissue of the plant and achieve the exact bitter opposite. The plant dies. Natural alternatives like honey or the aloe vera gel, just described on the other hand, are completely harmless. You basically cannot overdose them. They work in perfect harmony with the plant's nature instead of overwhelming it with a massive chemical shock. When we understand that nature already invented the perfect solutions to its own problems millions of years ago, we not only save a lot of money, but also achieve significantly healthier and more robust plants in the long run. Let's now come to a secret that is so old that even the ancient Romans are said to have known it. It is the absolute holy grail of plant propagation and won't cost you a single cent. I am talking about legendary willow water. If you have a willow tree anywhere near you, whether a weeping willow or a corkscrew willow, then you have nature's strongest medicine right on your doorstep. The bark of the willow is packed with natural salicylic acid and indole butyric acid. These are exactly the highly effective hormones that are artificially recreated in expensive specialty products in the laboratory. The willow uses these hormones to be able to grow extremely fast itself. If you simply stick a cut willow branch upside down into moist soil, it will still start to root. That is how strong the life force of this tree is. And the brilliant news is that we can easily extract this concentrated power and then pass it on to our own weaker houseplants. It is the ultimate booster that makes even branches root where all other methods have previously failed miserably. Making your own willow water is a wonderful little project for the afternoon. You simply go outside and collect a few very young, green willow branches. It is important that you really take the fresh, flexible tips from this year because that is where the concentration of the coveted hormones is highest. Then cut these small branches into short pieces of about 1 inch, 2 to 3 cm. Put 2 handfuls of these chopped pieces into a large glass and pour boiling hot water over them, just as if you were brewing a strong herbal tea. Then let the whole thing steep in a quiet place for at least 24 hours. After that, simply strain out the branches. The brownish liquid that now remains is pure liquid gold for your cuttings. Now simply place your freshly cut houseplant shoots completely into this willow water for the first 2 days. They will soak up the hormones like a sponge. After that, you can transfer them to normal water. The impulse for root formation has then already been irrevocably set. It works so incredibly well that you could almost call it an unfair advantage. Now we have talked a lot about magical additives, but we must not forget the absolute basic element that accounts for 80% of the success. We are talking about the water itself. What water do you use? If you simply turn on the tap and let cold water run over your cuttings, you might already be making the first serious mistake. The tap water in many cities is often heavily chlorinated or contains a lot of lime, which can clog sensitive plant pores. Chlorine is added to kill bacteria in drinking water. For us humans, this is safe in these small amounts. But for a delicate, freshly cut plant, it is an enormous stress signal. If you want to guarantee the perfect start, it is best to use collected rainwater. This is naturally soft and has the perfect acidity level. If you don't have a balcony, you can also simply boil your normal tap water and then let it cool down completely. Alternatively, you can simply leave the glass of water uncovered for 24 hours before placing the plant in it. This allows the harmful chlorine to evaporate completely into the room air, a small change with a massive impact. Another fascinating detail about water is the invisible factor of oxygen. Plant roots need to breathe. That sounds strange at first since they live underground, but it is the absolute truth. If water sits still in a glass on a warm windowsill for a long time, it gradually loses its bound oxygen. The water becomes stagnant and literally suffocates the tiny new root tips in the bud. Therefore, it is an absolutely fatal mistake not to touch the water for weeks. You have to change the water regularly. The perfect rhythm for this is about every 3 to 4 days. This brings fresh, vital oxygen into the glass. But beware, the next trap is lurking right here. When you change the water, please do not rinse the glass with aggressive dish soap, because even the smallest soap residues are pure poison for the seedlings. Just rinse it thoroughly with clear, hot water. Some plant professionals even throw a tiny piece of real charcoal into the glass of water. The charcoal acts as a natural filter, keeps the water crystal clear for longer, and biologically prevents the spread of harmful bacteria. Let's talk about a factor that is almost always completely forgotten, even though it decides the life and death of your cutting: the temperature. Imagine being thrown naked into a cold lake. You would use all your energy just trying not to freeze to death. The exact same thing happens to your cutting if the glass of water is too cold. Almost all plants originally come from the tropics or subtropics. They need warmth to stimulate their cells to divide. If the glass of water is sitting by a drafty window and the water cools down to 15 around C, The plant completely freezes its growth. Nothing happens. Zero. The perfect range for extremely fast rooting is between 72 and 79 degrees, 22 and 26 degrees. That is cozy and warm. If your windowsill is cold in winter, be sure to place a thick book or a small piece of styrofoam under the glass. Some growers even use special small heating mats for plants. Make sure that the water's always comfortably at room temperature when you change it. A sudden gush of ice-cold water from the tap puts the plant into a literal state of shock and can destroy weeks of hard work in seconds. Besides temperature, light naturally also plays a gigantic role. We have all learned that plants need the sun to photosynthesize and gain energy. That is absolutely correct. But with cuttings, the world looks a little different. It is a huge mistake to place the glass with the delicate cutting directly in the blazing midday sun at a south-facing window. The logic seems to be that more sun means more energy, but the exact opposite is the case. The cutting doesn't even have any roots yet to pump enough water up into the leaves. If the hot sun now beats down on the leaves, the plant evaporates an incredible amount of water to cool itself. But since no water is coming up from below, the cutting dies miserably of thirst, even though it is knee-deep in water. It is a cruel irony. The absolute ideal spot is bright, but without direct sunlight. An east-facing window or a spot a little deeper in the room is perfect. The light gives a signal for life, but without causing stressful sunburn. Gentle indirect light is the absolute key to great success here. Let's now move on to the technique that happens before the glass of water. The perfect cut. A wrong cut is like a bad surgery. It delays healing enormously. The most important golden rule here is always cut at an exact 45-degree angle. Many people simply snap the stem straight off with their fingernails or use dull kitchen scissors. This literally crushes the sensitive inside of the stem. The conductive pathways are blocked and the plant cannot absorb water later. But if you use a razor-sharp, previously disinfected knife and make a clean, angled cut on the stem, you enlarge the open area enormously. This means the plant has a much larger surface area to absorb water and our great hormones from the honey or willow. And there is another advantage to the angle. When the cutting stands on the bottom of the glass, it doesn't lie flat. It only touches the bottom of the glass at a tiny point. This allows the water to circulate wonderfully under the wound, and no foul coating forms at the lower end. It is pure geometry in the service of nature. But even the cleanest cut is absolutely useless if you cut in the completely wrong place. This is probably the best-kept secret of professional gardeners. Roots don't just grow randomly out of the stem anywhere. They grow almost exclusively from the so-called leaf node. This is the small thickening on the stem from which a new leaf normally sprouts. This node contains an extremely large number of cells capable of dividing, essentially the stem cells of the plant. If you simply cut your cutting in the middle of a smooth piece of stem, it can try as hard as it wants. Roots will form there only with extreme difficulty. You must always cut just below such a leaf node. Then carefully remove the lowest leaf at this node so that the node itself is completely exposed. It is exactly this bare node that must now lie below the water surface. From here, the new roots will shoot into the water like little white rockets. Once you have understood this anatomical secret of plants, your success rate will jump to 100% overnight. A question I am asked incredibly often is, how many leaves should I actually leave on my cutting? The temptation is often great to cut off a huge branch with 20 leaves because you want to have the largest possible plant in the end. But that is a fatal flaw in reasoning. Remember what we said about the energy balance. Every single leaf on this branch demands water and nutrients from the plant to stay alive. But a cutting without roots is like a person trying to breathe through a straw while climbing a mountain. It is completely overwhelmed. The magic number for the perfect cutting is 2 to a maximum of 3 medium-sized leaves at the top. Everything else, especially the lower leaves that would hang in the water and rot there anyway, you must ruthlessly cut off. Don't worry, the plant will grow new leaves as soon as it has roots. If the top leaf is extremely huge, like on a monstera for example, you can even cut the leaf in half with scissors. This looks a bit strange for a few weeks, but it radically reduces the evaporation surface and saves the plant's life. Despite the very best intentions and tricks, It can unfortunately sometimes happen that a cutting starts to turn dark and soft. If you see rot beginning, don't panic. All is not lost yet. You just have to act quickly. Take the seedling out of the water immediately and wash it under lukewarm water. Take a very sharp knife and generously cut off the rotten part until you see healthy, light green tissue again. And now comes an emergency trick from the pharmacy. Get yourself a 3% hydrogen peroxide solution. This is an extremely mild disinfectant that is also used for small scratches on children. Add a small splash of it to fresh water and place the clean cutting in it. The hydrogen peroxide immediately kills all remaining putrefactive bacteria. And what is even more brilliant, it breaks down into pure oxygen in the water. This additional oxygen boost is exactly what the sick plant needs right now to recover and make a new attempt at root formation. It is like a medical resuscitation for your beloved houseplants. Let's assume everything went perfectly. You used honey, the temperature was right, and now wonderful thick white roots are hanging from your cutting in the glass of water. Now comes the trickiest phase of all, where a shocking number of beginners fail. The move from the glass of water into real soil. If you simply stick the cutting into dry, hard potting soil now, it will suffer a terrible shock. The roots that have formed in the water are so-called water roots. They are extremely fine, soft, and completely untrained. They first have to get used to the harsh environment of the soil. The best way to mitigate this shock is a gradual transition. Simply add a small spoonful of fine potting soil to your glass of water every day. The water will become muddier and thicker as a result. After about a week, you will have a kind of mush in the glass. During this time, the delicate roots have slowly gotten used to the texture and nutrients of the soil. When you finally plant the plant in a flower pot, it will feel no stress at all and will continue to grow happily right away, as if nothing had ever happened. To make this transition absolutely foolproof, I would like to share the mini greenhouse trick with you. When the young plant is sitting in its new pot, its roots are initially not strong enough to meet the entire water needs of the leaves. The humidity in a normal living room is simply too low. The leaves will quickly droop limply. To prevent this, simply take a transparent plastic bag or a large freezer bag. Carefully place this bag over the entire pot and the plant from above. Blow a little air into it so that the leaves don't touch the plastic, and seal the bag slightly at the bottom. This way you have built a perfect little greenhouse in seconds. The moisture that the leaves evaporate remains trapped in the bag and is immediately absorbed again by the plant. You only need to briefly remove the bag once a day to let fresh air in and prevent mold. After about 1 to 2 weeks, you can leave the bag off completely. Your new plant is now firmly anchored in the soil and ready to conquer your home as a strong, healthy plant. All this knowledge might seem overwhelming at first glance, but basically it is simply understanding and imitating nature. Plants want to live and they want to grow. They are incredible survival artists. All we have to do is clear the obstacles out of their way and provide a little assistance. Whether it's the sticky gold of honey, the healing power of aloe vera, or the ancient knowledge about the hormone miracle of willow water. If you combine these simple tools with the right cutting techniques and knowledge about temperature and water quality, you will never have to throw away a rotten cutting again. You will be able to grow an armada of beautiful, healthy plants from a single beautiful branch, which you can then proudly give away to your friends and family. That is the true joy of gardening. It is not just a hobby, it is the creation of new life from the smallest beginnings. And now you are perfectly equipped to perform exactly these miracles on your own windowsill. And there we have it. Who would have thought that the secret to incredibly fast and healthy roots was hidden in your kitchen or out in the garden the whole time? The most important thing we learned today is that it's not artificial chemicals, but raw honey, willow water, or aloe vera that are the strongest allies for our cuttings. Combined with the right cut just below the leaf node, the perfect room temperature water, and vital oxygen, rot is finally a thing of the past starting today. You now have the absolute professional knowledge to create a real plant miracle from any small branch. It's almost as if you had a green magic wand in your hand. If these secrets have changed the way you look at the plants in your home, then subscribe to our channel. We unearth the methods that modern industry often wants us to forget. Let's plant the future together. The next green treasure will be revealed soon. Don't forget to leave a like on the video.